sir.
Good evening, Mr. Secretary. How you doing? All right, all right. Good to see you. All right.
How you doing? Good to see you.
Good
Are you gonna
morning.
speak from the podium? Not at all.
Not at all.
All right.
Hey, we're just going to make our remarks from right here, right?
I
There's
guess.
no reason to go up there and stand, because last year we did it right here.
Well, good morning. Welcome to the first signature event of ITSEC 2025. We have commenced. We're started. Appreciate you being here. I'm Vice Admiral Sean Buck, retired Navy. I am the president of the National Training and Simulation Association. I'm your host. My team and I are your host here in Orlando, and we're very grateful that you came. You have found the right room for all day today outside of the exhibit floor. This is the center of gravity for today. We're going to start out with a wonderful panel session here with our Congressional Caucus, and then I commend you to eat your lunch pretty fast and be sure you're back in this room at 12:30 for a very provocative presentation by the president of the Ohio State University on AI and higher education, and then maybe go take a quick break to make yourself comfortable and come right back in for Undersecretary of War Robert Tata. He is currently the Secretary for Personnel and Readiness in the Department of War, and he comes on stage at 1400 for a very wonderful moderated discussion with the President of NDIA, the Honorable David Norquist. So you found the right room, and if you're not in this room, we commend you to go enjoy the exhibit floor. So without further ado, this morning is always dedicated at ITSEC for our Congressional Day, and specifically to engage with the Congressional Modeling and Simulation Caucus, of which we have here in person 3 of the 4 co-chairs of the caucus. And we have, I believe, if I could ask you to raise your hand, I believe we have some staff members of the 4th co-chair, Representative Max Frost from here. There you are. Gentlemen, thanks for representing Congressman Frost. We're glad you're here. And gentlemen, thanks for coming to warm Orlando once again to kick us off on the first day. So what is the purpose of the Congressional Modeling and Simulation and Training Caucus up in Washington, D.C. on the Hill? They work as a collateral duty, beyond their jobs of representing their individual and respective constituencies, to strengthen and advocate for the modeling, simulation, and training industry for you all, to ensure that you all are always enabled to support the government needs, the warfighter needs, and make our nation as safe and secure as possible. So gentlemen, thanks right up front. Thank you for that continued advocacy. NTSA, we formally engage with the caucus 3 times a year. We meet here at ITSEC, and then right away, as we come out of the holidays coming up, in February, we will host a leadership conference, and we get the leaders and the co-chairs of the caucus to come and speak. This year will be, Congressman Soto, we're going to be in your district. We're going to host the leadership conference here in Kissimmee, and we appreciate you inviting us down here. Then in the summertime, in July, we go up onto Capitol Hill and put on what we call the Capitol Hill Modeling and Simulation Caucus. We have a small exhibition of industry, and we get a lot of the members of your respective staffs to come. And the purpose of that is mainly educational. We're looking to educate as many people as we can, staffers, members, visitors, as to what is modeling and simulation and why is it important to our nation. And then once again, next December, we'll bring the caucus down here and conclude the year with the ITSEC Congressional Day on the first day next December also. Now, in between those 3 events, we also routinely find ourselves on Capitol Hill engaging and updating the members on what's important to the industry, what are our needs, and what do we need them to continue to advocate for us. So I kind of asked myself, I thought I should ask the question, but explain it to you all. Why is this important to our industry? And why have we invited you to come into this room to hear this discussion? Two purposes. One is so that we can hear from the members of the Congressional Caucus about what's important to them and their constituency with regards to safety and national defense and national security. But two, and just as important, it's an opportunity for you all to engage with them in a live audience. So I'll say it a couple of times here, but I invite you, I don't see them right this moment, but throughout the room right now, we have some cards. There they are. The gentlemen in the back have some white cards. They're all around the room now. For you to write your questions down that you would like to pose to the members up here on the panel, and we can try to get through as many of those today as we can in our 90-minute session. So we'll listen to them, and you get to ask them and learn and tell them what's important to you, your industry, and maybe your respective company within the industry. So I've explained the questions. Please handwrite them now. I'm the guy that has to read your handwriting. I'm the guy that will try to present your question to these panelists. Last year, in my first experience, I did my best, but I looked at some of the handwriting and I thought all of you all might be medical doctors because the handwriting was not very clear. So if you want to be heard, please help me out with good handwriting. My intent here as the moderator, I'm going to briefly introduce all three and read you their biographies and a bit about their respective portfolios and where their passions lie as members of Congress. Then I'm going to go back to each of you gentlemen and give you an opportunity for opening remarks and opening comments, and then we'll transition from there and we'll go into questions and answers if that's okay. So without further ado, the senior member of the caucus, the co-founder of the caucus in 2005, Representative Bobby Scott. Congressman Scott founded the caucus in 2005. He saw a need for the importance of simulation to be brought to the forefront for this nation and for industry, and sir, we appreciate those efforts and that vision you had early back in 2005. Congressman Scott has represented Virginia's 3rd Congressional District in the House since 1993. Prior to his service in Congress, he served 15 years in the Virginia General Assembly. He also served in the Massachusetts National Guard and the United States Army Reserve. He is the ranking member of the Committee on Education and the Workforce, his 6th term as the committee's Democratic leader. He's very passionate in quests to reform criminal justice and provide outstanding educational opportunities for today's children and youth. He also serves on the Committee on the Budget, where he is a leading voice on fiscal policy. Please welcome Congressman Bobby Scott. Not yet. Second to Congressman Scott's right is Congressman Jack Bergman. Congressman Bergman serves as the 1st District of Michigan, which includes the beautiful Upper Peninsula and a large portion of the Lower Peninsula. And as I read, sir, approximately 44% of the landmass of the state of Michigan. Congressman Bergman is a retired United States Marine, rising to the rank of Lieutenant General. He also had a second career of 22 years in the commercial airline industry as a pilot. He additionally started and opened up 2 small businesses in the medical technology field. Congressman Bergman is driven by service to others. His passions include support of our military and those retired from the military. Well, sir, as a retired military, thank you. We appreciate that. He believes in the power of technology to improve our nation's infrastructure and encourage the growth and development through empowering small business. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Congressman Bergman. And last but not least, at the end is Congressman Darren Soto. He's the newest co-chairman of this caucus. He was elected to the House of Representatives in 2016, representing Florida's 9th Congressional District, which serves the community right here where we're sitting right this moment. He started his career in private practice as an attorney, practicing family law, real estate law, and civil litigation. He then served in the Florida House of Representatives from 2007 to 2012 and was an early proponent of developing the medical city out at Lake Nona here in the area. He then served in the Florida Senate through 2016 until he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. His passions include advocating for the protection of our environment, disaster recovery, and emerging technologies as represented by our industry. He has been a strong supporter of the caucus since his election to the House and remains a strong advocate for the businesses in Central Florida. Congressman Soto, welcome. And you all are probably taking notes for Congressman Frost, is that correct? Thank you very much, so that he's informed about what came out in this particular forum. Back to you, Congressman Scott, for any opening comments.
Well, thank you, Sean, and certainly a pleasure to be back. We're honored with Secretary Del Toro. It's good to see you. He's from Virginia. So it's good to see you, and it's good to see everyone. You gave me a more than generous welcome about my role in founding the caucus. Actually, it was Randy Forbes from Virginia who started the idea and wanted to form a caucus and needed it to be bipartisan. So we called his next door neighbor and asked me to be the co-chair of the Modeling and Simulation Caucus. And I said, okay, but by the way, what's that? And well, since then, we worked together for many years. When he left Congress, I continued on. But it's been a great, you've mentioned many of the things the caucus does, our responsibility, the two here, and John Rutherford is also a co-chair, is to educate our colleagues about the value of modeling and simulation. We do it, many of the things you mentioned, but basically in legislation going through, make sure that modeling and simulation is uplifted for our caucus. I'm pleased to be joined by Jack and Darren. Together we've had the privilege of doing that work, educating our colleagues to make sure that they're aware of what's going on. We're delighted to participate in the activities that you mentioned. One of the things that I like to point out is the modeling and simulation in my congressional district. In Hampton Roads, Southeast Virginia, there are a number of industry leaders in modeling and simulation, led by Virginia Modeling Analysis and Simulation Center at ODU, that's VMASC. Eastern Virginia Medical School has a National Center for Collaboration on Medical Modeling and Simulation. Norfolk State University has a Center for Excellence in Cybersecurity. Hampton University has a modeling and simulation program. Norfolk Naval Shipyard, Thomas Jefferson Lab, and NASA Langley. Military and medical medic training at Joint Base Langley Eustis and Portsmouth Naval Station. District is also the site of many prominent businesses using modeling and simulation, particularly Huntington Ingalls Industries, Newport News Shipbuilding, which has revolutionized the building of aircraft carriers and submarines. They're done digitally now, so you can see what's going on. The workers have their laptops, and rather than going up and down decks of flights to get to the paper blueprints, they can look on their laptop and see what's going on. There's been very successful for small businesses, starting off, Simus Inc., led by Johnny Garcia, started from scratch, and now I think I don't think you can even call it a small business anymore. He's been so successful, and there have been many others. In addition to representing Hampton Roads, I also serve as the lead Democrat on the Education and Workforce Committee. We've had a lot of legislation passed in the past couple of years. The bipartisan infrastructure law makes promises to invest in our infrastructure, and modeling and simulation is a big part of that. It was an example of how Congress can utilize ModSim policy because the law directs utilization of modeling and simulation to better plan traffic, assess risks, ensure resiliency, and better plan large-scale projects. We've also successfully worked to get modeling and simulation language in other past infrastructure bills. And to build on that momentum, Congress also passed the CHIPS and Science Act. We used modeling and simulation to coordinate the supply chain and things like that. And the Inflation Reduction Act, where we make a huge step forward in the global climate crisis. Hampton Roads, the district that I represent, is a coastal community and is an ongoing victim of sea level rise, frequent flooding, and increased threats to hurricanes. So I was pleased to see the law's investments in climate change, and particularly pleased to see that we're leveraging modeling and simulation to ensure that things like clean energy and offshore wind are designed as efficiently as possible. Investments in the infrastructure law, CHIPS and Science, and Inflation Reduction Act have created good-paying jobs, and modeling and simulation can take a large credit for that legislation. Unfortunately, we're facing challenges with the new administration. President Trump has reduced funding already in the Inflation Reduction Act through executive orders. He's called for Congress to repeal the CHIPS and Science Act, and his current budget eliminates more than a third of the staff of the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, and regrettably, there are plans to significantly cut the funding for the National Infrastructure Simulation and Analysis Center. In addition, risk management operations, which include critical infrastructure analysis and simulation modeling, are also targets for cuts. So as we go through the legislative process, it's going to be our job to make sure that modeling and simulation initiatives can survive. We need to convince our colleagues that investments in modeling and simulation will actually save money in the long run, and anything you can do, calling your members of Congress along those lines, would be extremely helpful. Now, I don't have to tell this group that we just got out of the longest government shutdown in history. Congress is in the process of finalizing the 2026 appropriations with a new deadline of January 30th, 2026, and we hope we can get things done by then. We're pushing for language to be included in the Homeland Security Appropriations Act for a pilot program, a national simulation-based emergency preparedness network. If funded, the pilot program will support the Department of Homeland Security's Office of Health Security mission to strengthen the nation's health security and create a safer, healthier Department of Homeland Security workforce and optimal care for patients. We work together to get that language. We work together with experts at VMASC and Eastern Virginia Medical School, and we're able to get the language included in the House version of the bill, and hope the final version will also include that language. Furthermore, I'm honored to recognize the importance milestone in higher education in manufacturing. Modeling and simulation education grants were established as part of the 2008 Higher Education Authorization Act, but although established in 2008, it wasn't until 2021 that we actually got funding. Old Dominion University in my district did receive a grant, but I'm disappointed that with the dissolution of the Department of Education, that was not funded last year, and we're not sure what's going to happen this year. In the interest of improving our nation's workforce development program, last Congress we came to a bicameral, bipartisan agreement on the reauthorization of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. In those negotiations, I prioritized summer and year-round employment for at-risk youth, substantial training vouchers for those who are displaced and now unemployed, and codifying partnerships between employers and community colleges, and also strengthening industry sector partnerships to better meet the needs of both employers and job seekers, particularly in situations like we have in Ohio, where they're closing plants that make combustion engine cars and converting to electric cars. Some of the skills don't translate. So they have to be retrained to work on the new cars, and that's an entire sector, not just one job, but a bunch of jobs that need training in that sector. And this will also advance the workplace training opportunities in modeling and simulation to ensure that job seekers have what is required to meet the needs of innovative businesses and thrive in today's economy. We almost got the bill passed at the end of the last Congress. We actually had it tucked into the continuing resolution that blew up in December, and by the time it was put back together, our legislation wasn't part of the bill, but we're on track to pass it soon, whatever that means. But it's on track, and I think we're still in agreement. There was, in addition to reauthorization of WIOA, there was one bright spot in that bill that some call a big, beautiful bill, others call it the big, ugly bill, and that is that we finally passed what short-term Pell or workforce Pell. Right now, if you take a course that leads to a college degree, you can get assistance with a Pell Grant. If all the course leads to is a good job, can't use the Pell Grant. I think most people think that's ridiculous. If it leads to a good job, you ought to be able to use the Pell Grant. That legislation that's passed the House a couple of times, haven't been able to get it past the Senate, actually passed in that big bill. The regulations are almost finished, so that's going to give an opportunity for job training, for skills training, and be almost unlimited funding. A lot of these courses that can take 6, 8, 16 weeks and can transform their earning capacity to minimum wage to $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 with overtime, $100,000 a year. They can get on a track with stackable credentials. They get on the first rung of the ladder and can work their way up. And so this, we feel, is going to be a tremendous opportunity for young people who are not going to a four-year college. The trick in this thing all along is to make sure that when you take a course and use the Pell Grant, you actually get a decent skill that can lead to a good job. We don't want people to set up little storefronts and deal out worthless certificates and take all the Pell money. So we want to make sure that the regulations make sure that you're getting training for decent jobs. So as we go forward, we're going to be focused on making sure that we build on these successes and make sure that we have the workforce, K through 12 and post-secondary, to make sure that the industry has the workers that they need to survive. So I want to thank everyone for being here to discuss how modeling and simulation can improve training programs, health outcomes, resiliency, efficiency, and planning, and appreciate the opportunity to discuss this with you, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Sir. Congressman Bergman, over to you.
Thank you, Sean. Good morning, everyone. How many of you in the room here have attended this panel in previous years? So how many of you who raised your hands, is it true that Bobby Scott gets younger every year? He never, ever ages. I'm not sure what I've found his secret to be yet, but I'm gonna hang in there with him as long as I can to figure out what it is. But let's, one change in what I'm doing in Congress now from last year at this time. When we started the new Congress in January, I was honored to have the opportunity to become the subcommittee chairman on armed services on readiness. The cycle before that, I was Intel and Special Ops subcommittee chair. The point is, readiness touches everything. There is nothing that readiness does not touch. So I come here today to continue the dialogue with all of you as it relates to what readiness means in our military and as a Marine. To me, it means lethality. Very simple. Whatever sector you're in, lethality is going to enable our forces to fight and win when they have to fight. Now, there are barriers to future readiness and future success, and to kind of put them into the tight pattern here, that why all of you are here in Orlando. We got too many silos, too many stovepipes, whatever you want to, that you got two people working next to one another, and they're doing great things, but they're wasting time and money and effectiveness by not coordinating. So silos and stovepipes need to be rethought. I know you are rethinking them because you are changing minds with the technology that you're providing. So you're on the leading edge of it, whether you realize it or not. So part of your goals should be to streamline where possible. Obviously, we have some things we do on the classified side that need to kind of maintain a silo, if you will, just because of the classification nature. Second thing is affordability. One of the reasons, as we were on the floor here in the last hour, the cost to train, pick your mechanic, your pilot, your crypto, whatever it happens to be, we have to manage and leverage the affordability of modeling and simulation. And the third thing is that the battlefield changes by the moment, and the forward-thinking nature of all of you in this room to continue to not fall in love with what you're doing today, but be willing to accept the fact that a good decision made today may have a shelf life, if you will. That's the nature of what you do. Accept that, and then let's move forward. So having said that, I'm looking forward to your questions, because that really drives the value, at least for me, of being here, and hopefully for you too. So thanks for being here, and let's have a good discussion.
Thank you, sir. Representative Soto.
First of all, welcome to Central Florida. How many locals do we have here? Raise your hand. Don't we have such an amazing region? For the rest of you, welcome in. Yes, the weather's been 70s all week. Hopefully you got to do some golf like Jack did the other day. Or while you're stuck in this amazing conference, your families are enjoying the theme parks and so many other things. And hopefully you took an extra day or two. This is what my constituents do. We make memories for families, for conventioneers, and so many others. And so we're so thrilled to have you. And I'm honored that you picked Kissimmee, my hometown, for the next one, which is just a few miles down the road. So I hope you'll enjoy that too, part of the whole region here. And thank you also for what you do for the warfighter, for so many of our troops, both to make their training more efficient, to help protect them, and also to make sure that we're saving money, which all those things are so absolutely critical. And our simulation and training is part of a key, not only help with the military, but key economic driver around here. We mentioned both Lake Nona, where we're actually branching out to both medical and logistics for factories and for engineering with digital twins and utilizing this technology beyond training. Of course, we have PEO Strive. The folks from PEO Strive, if you wouldn't mind raising your hands. Thank you for what you do locally. Making sure that we're helping out with all branches. It is exciting to see the Space Force starting to be part of this as well, which we have a lot of presence among the Space Force here. We also work integrally with the University of Central Florida. I see Tubby here. Good. Appreciate the work that you all are doing to make sure that they're working hand in glove with our universities as well. We face certain challenges, right? I was very excited about hearing from the presentations this morning about interoperability, which when I think about the many generations of systems you're using, how critical that is. Fidelity, right? It's got to feel as real as as you can. We even heard that some of you brought in some folks from Hollywood to make the scenery look even more real. Obviously, there's going to be other partnerships with AI chips and other industries, and when to do that is going to be critical as well. And then we face certain challenges as a Congress that we need to step up to help you with. An NDAA that focuses on the military and on making sure that we reaffirm all the critical things that you do with simulation training and not getting caught in all the nastiness and cultural wars that sometimes get dragged into this thing. And then the budget. Gosh, wouldn't it be nice to have a budget, right? We did not have a 2025 budget, but I am praying and hoping and working with colleagues on both sides of the aisle that we will. What was that? To make sure we have a 2026 budget, because we know we could talk about all these great things that we want to do, but without an NDAA and without a budget, going flat from the 2024 levels for yet another year will be a struggle. And so we have things that we expect of you all to help lift up our warfighters, and there's things that you all need to continue to expect from us to make sure to support this amazing industry. And again, welcome to Central Florida. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you, sir. So time hack, we've got about 54 minutes for questions. You are a very inquisitive and concerned audience. I've got some phenomenal questions that have already been given to me, gentlemen, so I think we're going to have a rich dialogue. So this is an open question to any of you or all of you. Can you provide any update on the plan to reauthorize the lapsed Small Business Innovation and Research, the SBIR program? Many companies utilize that program, and it is currently stalled. Congressman Bergman, you want to take a lead on the SBIR program?
Yeah, not to be district specific, but in Michigan, there's a lot of small businesses that utilize the program. The short answer is I can't give you a timeline. All I can tell you is that those of us who know it's the right thing to do know we need to get it at the priority level. This is beginning to sound like a political answer already, but I don't know. But there are those of us who work behind the scenes, Democrats and Republicans, doesn't make a difference. Because without small business and without the utilization of funds like the SBIR funds, you're not going to be able to get started. So we recognize that the question is how do we prioritize it as we look at the larger bureaucratic nature of Washington, D.C. And by the way, the bureaucracies in Washington, D.C. really don't care if Republicans or Democrats are in charge. They really don't. They just want to be left alone. Well, I'm not a guy that's going to leave the bureaucracy alone. I'll leave it at that.
Gentlemen, this is definitely applicable to all your districts, so Congress.
If I may add, first of all, at the UCF PEO Stride cluster, you have a lot of small businesses that through the SBA have been able to, as Bobby had mentioned with one of the businesses in his district, grow. I do appreciate the Navy talking about in their presentation how they're integrating new small businesses and emerging technologies. It comes down to, will we have a budget and an end of the year package? That's usually where tax extenders are passed. So if we get a functional Congress for this end of the year to pass a budget that is being actively negotiated, along with the NDAA, that provides the best type of vehicle to get a lot of these tax credits that have lapsed a chance to be extended. So hopefully we'll have a good end of the year package that'll be able to resolve a lot of that.
And a lot of, well, everybody knows that small businesses need the help and it's the backbone of our economy. But a lot of these things can get done by tucking the legislation in a larger bill. Sometimes the NDAA has been a catch-all for a lot of agreed upon legislation, if it's agreed upon, they'll often let the NDA carry it, and it can pass that way. And hopefully, something like that, we just let it ride on some other legislation and get it reauthorized. We don't need to let it lapse.
Absolutely, thank you. And just important, about 80% of the membership of NTSA and NDIA is small business. So we definitely appreciate the importance that a program like SBIRS is to you all, as Congressman Bergman, as you say, to even get started. So thank you all for your advocacy for that. That'll be something important to reinitiate and not let it lapse. Shifting over to an AI-centered question, this is for all three of you. As AI-enabled simulation becomes essential for analysis, training, and operational planning, what role do you see Congress playing in shaping data standard policies that allow services to share and use data sets? We talked a little bit about this at our Lunch and Learn on the Hill a few months ago. Very, very important about data repositories, data purity, the trust in data, and the sharing of data.
Congress is not an expert in anything. And those of us in the let's just keep it at the House of Representatives, we're elected every 2 years to represent the folks in our district. And if we are good at one thing and need to be good at one thing, and that's working together as members of the House to ensure that we, to the best of our ability, not being an expert, don't allow the introduction, the utilization, the growth, the refinement, the next generations of AI to begin to run the show. We have a moral responsibility as legislators. We're not scientists. And as long as I believe as a Congress, we keep the focus on that and then be open to hearing, whether it's through a caucus, like your caucus here, different caucuses. There's, Lord knows, 800-900 caucuses in the House of Representatives. If as we move forward, caucuses that are committed, again, Democrats and Republicans working together, to making sure that we understand what our role is in enabling the future of AI without losing control. I'll kind of leave it at that.
Let me just say that setting a standard for data, the legislative process is not the best way to do that. I mean, it's subject to compromises, and you get close to the end, and you say 8, and I say 10. Well, let's go with 9. That might make sense, and might not. You just don't. The legislative process is just not designed for it. There are a lot of things, like how to protect the data, and who gets to use the data, and for what purpose, good or bad. There's a lot of data out there that we're not using that could be put to good use, and a lot of data's out there that you don't want people accessing. So privacy, there are a lot of things that need to be considered. So the industry is going to have to step up and make some real suggestions, what we ought to do. But please don't leave it up to the legislative process to come up with something.
I would say, though, at the highest level, we would at least authorize the ability to share this data. And I know that in our briefing just a few months ago, you all presented some model legislation that would help do that, so that you're authorized to do it. And then from there, the nuts and bolts of the rules that come out from that would be through the military itself. The other issue that we talked about with this issue was making sure that the data is accurate and that it's closed system to avoid cybersecurity issues as well. And that's certainly going to be another part of it. And as we look to AI being integral to the future of defending our nation, it's going to be only as good as the data sets it trains on. And so we know This is important. I'm not so sure their military is totally barred from sharing the data right now, but perhaps legislative authority would make sure we're in a better spot for that. But this absolutely needs to get done to make sure that the AI that we're developing is accurate and helps make realistic and right scenarios and decisions as it. But at the end of the day, you still need our military actually in charge of it, and it being a tool to help, not to replace any decision making that currently our generals and high-ranking officers already make.
So I'd like to add to that response and let you know what a couple of organizations that represent you all are doing. This is, so I loved your answer. You all are in a position to authorize and to fund and allow the experts that we're looking at right now in the room to define it and what it should be. And as that's fielded through your respective staffs and you all, if you can get us the authority and the authorization and the funding to carry forward, it'll be a benefit to all. NTSA, as well as our partners here in Orlando, the National Center for Simulation, when we come together and go up on the Hill, that will be one of the things that we're advocating for you in the coming year or two, is a data repository, a trust in data, and the accuracy of the data. So let it be known that we're listening to you, but as the members of Congress said, we need you all as the experts to define that. What does right look like, so that they can authorize it and put the federal horsepower behind it to make it a good thing for all of us. Thank you all for that answer. This is to the entire panel. What is the plan to combine the modeling and simulation and the AI caucuses into one in the future, or do you believe they should remain separate caucuses up on the Hill? Have regulatory mechanisms been developed for AI that you know of yet?
Separate, and on the front end of developing the regulations and rules by which we'll do that, because there may be a time in the future, as we get more of a handle on AI, that we say, okay, we should apply it to here as opposed to there. But that only comes after we have a better understanding of the ramifications, the power, and the different roads that AI could take us down, and we have to be very aware. I'll use a flying analogy as a pilot. You're up in the air. We've taken off. The flight is airborne with AI. We're not sitting on the ground waiting to take off. We are now in the air. The question is, how much gas do we have? What kind of weather's in front of us? Do we have a passenger emergency on board? All of those things that in the end, for now, and I don't see an end game, there has to be a human that really can let the technology do its work.
I'm not aware of any effort to combine them at this point. There are obviously a lot of overlapping interests, and if an issue comes up where we want to have a meeting or a hearing or something like that, we can have a joint hearing to discuss an issue that covers both areas. But I'm just not aware of any at this point. Maybe it's something we need to look at, but I think the issues involving modeling and simulation and the issues involving AI, some will get left out if we try to combine them.
Okay.
And I would say they'd be separate because AI is going to be in many different industries, and this is one use of it. It's not a perfect overlap. But the caucuses are important so that like-minded members, as far as different issues, get to work together, but it's really the committees that are going to do this work. And so I think it's important. Each committee is going to see what they need to do. So I'm in the Energy and Commerce Committee. We basically regulate every Fortune 500 company in America, and it's a great committee for job creation here in Central Florida. Jack is in the defense committees, and Bobby's in education. All those are going to have different AI applications. I will say one thing that we don't need to do, though, is to preempt all state AI regulation for the next 10 years, which is one of the proposals that's being bounced around but was rejected by the Senate. I do think we should have federal laws on AI dealing with data sets and proper uses of it. But it will take time, as it should be, because we develop laws that 340 million Americans need to follow. So in the meantime, I think the states and our forefathers wanted this become the experiments of democracy to help see which laws are working or not. And then, Congress has to get up and do some stuff eventually. But I don't view the fact that we haven't done a lot yet from a law point of view as a bad thing. It's allowing for this innovation that Jack was just referencing and Bobby. And so each committee will develop different aspects of it, since AI will be across multiple different sectors, from private to education to military and commercial.
Very well. Rep. Scott, this is a question that was directed toward you, and your colleagues can chime in, but initially, please start. With the Department of Energy and higher education facing significant political pressure and reductions, as you mentioned in your opening remarks, many of us in higher education are concerned about how these actions will impact our ability to prepare students for critical national security and workplace needs. How does Congress plan to support K through 12 colleges and universities so that we can continue to develop the talent in this field and produce the future workforce?
Well, let me focus on education first. People have to understand what role the Department of Education plays. It's very little actual education. We're actually prohibited from involving ourselves in the curriculum, local curriculum. We don't do anything on how you prepare teachers, what you teach, how you teach it. What the Department of Education does is whatever you got going K through 12, that all students have access to it on an equitable basis. That means that since we fund education through the real estate tax, Title I puts money into low-income areas, Title I of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. You have students with disabilities, making sure they can get a free and appropriate public education, those speaking English as a second language, trying to eliminate racial achievement gaps. All of those is access to your education. When we passed the Every Student Succeeds Act a couple of years ago, we were trying to increase the standards for a high school diploma. At the same time, staying out of the local education decisions. And what we came up with was that a high school diploma to prepare you to get into a state college without remediation. Didn't say how many years of English, how many years of science, how many years of English. Whatever your colleges require, you ought to be able to get in without remediation. And so when you talk about education, people think the Department of Education is doing something in education. In higher education, we don't tell the colleges what to teach. We just make sure that we have Pell Grants and student loans so that students can go. Now, when you get rid of the Department of Education, what you've essentially gotten rid of are the civil rights aspects of education. You haven't gotten the education decisions still go on local and state. And so when you talk about what's going to happen if we don't have a Department of Education, there will still be education functions on the federal level. It's kind of vague trying to listen through the rhetoric, but the sense is that all of the functions in the Department of Education will land somewhere else. Maybe student loans will end up in Treasury or small business or something, but all of the functions, there just won't be a department. The other idea is to get rid of the Department of Education and everything that's in it, which means you'd eliminate Pell Grants, student loans, Title I, oversight on students with disabilities. and everything else. I think most people perceive the getting rid of the Department of Education as the secretary and a few deputies losing their jobs and all the functions land somewhere else in federal government, being essentially administered by people who don't know what they're doing, because the people who were doing it have been left behind somewhere. But the actual impact is kind of hard to ascertain.
I stand corrected. I think I said Department of Energy, and you quickly went to Department of Education. Thank you for getting me back on track. Gentlemen, any additional comments?
Yeah, I just would file all this under Congress needs to pass a budget, because we've seen massive reductions in employees at USAID and at the Department of Education by the Trump administration. And the only reason why it's allowed to happen is because the courts have slow-rolled it and Congress hasn't passed a budget to make sure we're enforcing these things. And that's where reasserting ourselves through an end-of-the-year package is absolutely critical also for our defense budget, to make sure that we're not flatlining this money for another year. And where USAID is directly related to a lot of the work that the military does, if you see destabilization of nations because of hunger, that only causes more threats to the nation and to our allies over and across the world. And so there have been a lot of wise generals over the years who've talked about how the importance of soft power like diplomacy, like food aid and other things help prevent us from having to get into more conflicts. And so I do hope that Congress will step up and do the right thing to make sure we're funding it. If we want it at those levels, then that's what we vote for. If we want it at a higher level, then that's what we vote for. But Congress needs to act to make sure that these agencies are funded at the level with us having the power of the purse by what our prerogative is.
Representative Bergman, this one definitely fits your career experience. Manned flight versus unmanned flight. Secretary of War Hegseth wants predominantly unmanned flight in the future as a capability. This will greatly affect a big percentage of the modeling, simulation, and training industry. Do you think this will happen, and when?
Simple question. Think about this. When I first entered the airline business in the late 70s, the airplanes, the commercial airliners that we flew were three-person cockpits. You had a captain, a first officer, and a flight engineer who sat sideways, the wrench. You actually had a separate rating, flight engineer rating, that you went through before you could fly on a commercial airplane. Fast forward, by the mid-'80s, industry, Boeing, Airbus, whoever, McDonnell Douglas, had transitioned, because of technology and workload, to two-person cockpits, okay? Eliminating the flight engineer position. There was a big, I don't know if kerfuffle's the right word, back in that time frame, about, oh my God, what are we going to do without that third person in the cockpit? Well, quite honestly, you're going to fly the airplane safely because you don't need that third person. They have been replaced by technology. So how do we go to the next stage? I would suggest to you, we're not going to go to single pilot for large aircraft. Obviously, single-seat fighters, different story. I would not discount the fact that we are going to have aircraft that do not have a flight crew on them, simply because of one thing, and that's duration of flight. The limits of human capabilities when you need a rest and all of those kinds of things. So we're going to continue. Now, is it going to be wholesale? All of a sudden, are all the pilots going to disappear? Well, I would suggest to you not in our lifetime. Okay? unless there's some breakthrough in technology. Take it down to the, 2 days ago I was listening to whatever radio station, and they were talking about, that now you can hail a unmanned driverless cab in certain cities. Before certain cities had, autonomous vehicles driving them around. You can see that is going to change. The question is, now this is maybe an attempt at humor, I would certainly support all of that here in Orlando to get the hell out of the traffic. Okay, because I got more important things to do with my time than sit there and wonder if the guy to my left realizes I'm there and is going to run into me because he likes my lane better. So I'll just stop. There is a transition to more unmanned flight.
Since Orlando was invoked, first of all, we're doing just that, Jack. You'll be excited to know. eVTOLs, flying cars, whatever you want to call it, our international airport here in Orlando already bid out and is going to be one of the first airports to have these flying drones that take you about 50 to 70 miles. Now, they still will have pilots for the foreseeable future, but we're going to see that. We already have autonomous buses in Central Florida, too, with Beep, which is in Lake Nona and also in Maitland. And so I agree with Jack that you're going to see more and more automation, but the key question is, where is it absolutely critical that we have a pilot? And as we have more and more flights that are in space, how key will it be as we go there? In the context of the Space Force and getting back to the moon and all those things, as you get further out there, and you're going to need humans to help make decisions for critical things like going back to the moon, going to stay, having space stations that hover around the moon, trying to find ice and minerals and other things. One of the increasing things you all will be tasked with is, where do we absolutely need pilots to be doing this stuff, and where can we spare it? Because there's going to be more demand on pilots as we increasingly have a growing space economy as well, where more and more people, surprisingly, will be, especially folks who are just coming out right now. They might later on be tasked with flying in space before you know it over the next 10 to 15 to 20 years. So I think it's not just will we not need them in some areas, it's where are new areas that we will need them in that we'll also have to make a decision on.
Very good, thank you. Rip Scott, any?
Well, there are obviously a lot of advantages in unmanned aircraft. I understand there's some law of war implications using drones that I think have to be considered.
Very well. This is for all of you all on the panel. Artificial intelligence has rapidly emerged onto the technology space over the past few years. As you know and has been discussed, NTSA has held a leadership summit and a lunch and learn up on the Hill this year about the intersection of AI and modeling and simulation. We'll continue to work with you in this area on a day-to-day basis. Gentlemen, what do you see as the greatest challenge in integrating AI in the daily life of our nation and its security? Is it policy related? Is it funding? Is it a trust level? Is it an education level?
So from the area I work on, which is in commercial, one of the things will be data sets have to be accurate, because these machines are only as good as the data sets they had, and we had a discussion on that already. I'm also concerned to make sure we're not overly reliant on it. When I see, for instance, young people getting AI to make their resumes, and then people are using AI to review those resumes, it's like, did anybody at any point do something? I think when I see students and lawyers citing cases that don't exist because they used AI to make their briefs, so over-reliance, I think, is a key, and we have to understand the limitations of AI. Using the I in AI, I think, is a misnomer for a lot of folks, because it's still a computer, and it doesn't have the ability to think independently like we do. But it can, be very efficient to make solutions that we might not have thought of based upon data we provide to them, and also make things more efficient. When we're in the height of the pandemic, it was a supercomputer at the Department of Energy that sorted through many antivirals to realize that remdesivir was the first antiviral that would work to at least reduce the symptoms of COVID. And so scenarios like that are going to be absolutely critical to help us with complex problems. But over-reliance, data sets, making sure that we train our young people on are all areas I'm concerned about.
But are we hearing saying overall you'd like it to advance and be inculcated into the daily life of humans just with some type of constraints, regulation?
Of course, maybe that should have been without saying, but yes, we should be advancing, as Jack mentioned. It is a moral imperative on the defense side for us to continue to advance it. On the commercial side, you're either continuing to be cutting edge, or you go the way of Blockbuster Video and Tower Records, right? So you constantly have to innovate, no doubt.
Well, I would think, to answer that last question, I don't think it matters what we think. It's going to be, advancements are going to occur. And so we have to deal with it. One of the things, just in addition to what Darren said, the accountability after in using AI, are you accountable for the results? There's been a lot of consternation in the civil rights community, for example, when you use AI to screen applicants. If you have a discriminatory pattern, are you immune to it? Oh, I didn't discriminate, I just used AI. Are you accountable for the results? And that's, I think, one of the things as you go through, you're going to have some oversight of what's going on. You have to have some appreciation for what the input, what the algorithms and whatnot are, because you should be accountable for the results.
I would like to channel my youngest daughter, who's now the retired elementary teacher. And her favorite grade to teach for over a couple of decades was third grade, okay? And you've all heard the following phrase, but she brought it home to me all the time. Up until the third grade, you learn how to read. And then after the third grade, you read to learn, to comprehend. We have to be very cautious that we don't inhibit the development of young children, especially in that very vulnerable age, to not have them fully develop as human beings. And you could take it out of that and put it also into musculoskeletal development too, but let's just talk about the development of the ability to read for comprehension. Because if we don't do that, we know what the results long-term will be, and none of us want that.
Very good. I think we're getting a sense in this room, as I told you, this would be the center of gravity of the discussions today. I believe President Carter, later in his remarks, are going to touch on some of these very topics about the positives and the negatives of implementing AI into education. So I look forward to the continued effort in this dialogue today. Rep. Bergman, this is for you. It was asked by the audience. What policies, programs are you working on in your office and in your mind to encourage de-siloing efforts in tech development and acquisition? What incentives to the services are there to coordinate and communicate and reduce duplication? Maybe the first part of that question, sir.
Yeah, when you combine my role as Readiness Subcommittee Chair, and I'm also a member of the Budget Committee, and being a Marine and relatively frugal, some might say cheap, on the front end. Now this might make some of you uncomfortable. There's a guy, God rest his soul, who had an idea about shipping small packages around the country very quickly. Okay, Fred Smith, Marine, FedEx. Do we ship a package these days? No, we FedEx it. UPS isn't happy with that, but the bottom line is, FedEx became a verb. There were a few folks up in Minnesota a long time ago who said, we're going to quit copying paper, we're going to Xerox it. Xerox became a verb, okay? Now this is where it's going to get uncomfortable. I believe doze should be a verb, okay? And if we don't, we are not going to properly allocate the resources necessary. By the way, the resources are limited, but if we don't advance, and companies, private sector companies do this naturally, especially when companies merge. You don't need 2 HR departments. You don't need 2 R&D. You merge. Federal government is not a business, was never designed to be a business, but we are also federal government, and if this, again, I'll just tell it like I see it. As a federal bureaucracy, set of bureaucracies, we are morbidly obese. And if you're morbidly anything, it means if you don't do something, you're going to perish. So just a simple, uncomplicated thought.
Any further?
Well, one of the problems with the federal government is it tries to be fair, and that has complications. I mean, some former mayor in Chicago said if you got a insurance contract and it's at the same price, everybody's charging the same thing, what's wrong with giving it to your brother-in-law? Well, no, we need to have bids and make it fair and open. And that has costs to it. And the question is whether you're going to pay the costs of being fair and open or whether you're going to be more efficient. Just give it to your brother-in-law.
One thing I would add is, we had efficiencies that were attempted, and yet still last month we had the largest deficit of any month-over-month ever. And so we need to find efficiencies, and I agree with my colleagues on that. But if we decimate the tax base with the richest Americans paying very little, it doesn't matter how much we get efficient because our deficits are exploding because the revenue has been ticked away year after year after year, and there's only so much you can make a military efficient while still meeting the threats of 2 of the largest nations in the world that are threats to us, right? As the main strategy of being able to take on a Russia and China at the same time. I hope that never happens, by the way. And so I do think efficiencies are important, but there's been a decimation of the revenue so much that even after that, there's an even bigger deficit now than there ever has been.
I'm going to turn the topic to some of our international partners that are in the audience and visiting this week. President Trump values the collaboration with our international partners. As you know, we have many international and coalition partners who are here this week attending ITSEC. Are there ways that you think we can support these partners and further your objectives for our international community?
Yes. I'm thinking of an example here. When you think about what our Department of State was designed to do 250 years ago, a lot of, I believe, our success with our international partners will occur because the State Department has refocused its efforts. I was going to say slim down, but that would assume State Department isn't necessarily obese. Its resources, human resources here, and to an extent some dollar resources, have been focused on things that don't enable better relations with countries around the world who will benefit from their partnership with the U.S. and our allies, because we know the world is inherently a dangerous place. But that really, as we are set up as a government, falls into the State Department doing what it was designed to do. And we have seen some improvements here in the last year. And I believe those improvements are going to be reflected in the response from our allies. Our adversaries will always be our adversaries. Let's face it, they're not really interested in our success. They're interested in the opposite. So we have to just be realistic when we look in the mirror and say, what is our intent in our international relations, knowing that what may be a significant priority one day, maybe a year or 6 months later, or whenever it happens to be, we've got another little brush fire burning somewhere, and that brush fire usually starts because the United States, through the State Department, largely, has not got the continuity of relationships in those countries.
I think we have this debate every time you have a foreign aid bill, whether or not we ought to be sending money overseas. I think those investments significantly reduce the chance of us going to war somewhere. Disaster relief, people remember that kind of thing, foreign aid. Foreign exchange students, when you get to know other people, you're less likely to want to go to war with that group. I think those investments serve us well. To the extent that you cut those off, you just make it more likely that something bad's going to happen in the future. And there's no direct line to that. These are just long-term investments. And if you look at what the Iraq and Afghanistan wars cost, I mean, you're talking trillions. When you're talking about foreign aid, you're talking, billions. So you can make a lot of investments in foreign aid that don't pay out. If you make a few that do pay out, the dividends are extraordinary. And I think they just rather live in a world where people are getting along, and foreign aid is part of that.
I would say for your group in particular, sharing of simulation training technology and interoperability with other nations that are allies are going to be two key things that you all it would greatly help with our foreign policy. And then the question will be how much to share, right? How interoperable do you want to be with our allies based upon our relationship with them, the threats in that region. But we should have the potential of near perfect interoperability, much like you all are working on that with multiple generations of different systems that are both older but still work and newer ones. And so that's one of the biggest things your group could do specifically to help out with our allies.
An additional audience question on this topic of our international partners. We have been stepping back from security and intelligence agreements with our allies and partners, and as a result, many of our international relationships have begun to be frayed, affecting our safety and national security. How can Congress help mitigate this damage to our relationships with our partners?
I think one of the things that Congress, and by the way, I won't speak for my colleagues here, but I'm not in the Senate. I still eat solid foods. I don't take an afternoon nap. But in the House of Representatives, where we can, I think, provide the example, is to stop with all the middle school drama that we have seen most recently in a 43-day, shutdown. I'm not going to get into left, right, this, that, or the other. But we as members of the House of Representatives can be the example of good human behavior regardless of a political leaning or ideology. Because if we don't show that example to others, how can we expect others to be that example that we expect them to be? It's got to start with us.
Very good.
And I would say congressional delegation trips to different countries, as well as welcoming delegations in, are absolutely critical to make sure that we understand that as there are varying different positions in Washington for various different countries, that the Congress respects these bilateral and multilateral relationships. And you all also play a key role as you're working with your allies and your colleagues in different countries on different joint programs. When I think about, as the beaches in Normandy were stormed, that Canada was right alongside us as an example, and what a critical relationship we have with them. As we see in Ukraine right now, we're playing a supportive role, but we're working very closely with the Europeans, right, and have a history of working with them since the founding of our republic, other than that first war or two that we had with them, with the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812. And so you all can each, as well as the Congress, through our individual interactions and efforts, continue to maintain a lot of these relationships that have been frayed a little as of late.
Most foreign affairs is conducted by the executive branch. You can't have 435 members of the House and 100 members of the Senate, each acting as a freelance diplomat. But I think there's some things we can do. We can speak up, and we can make sure that the foreign aid budget is fully funded, particularly USAID and things like that, to express our feeling that the foreign aid is important.
Very well.
Let me add one thing. I agree totally on the fully funding, but it also has to be all accounted for. Just because you fund it doesn't relieve you of the responsibility to account for it.
Very well. Here's a basic question, but really, really important one for all of us. It applies not only to members of Congress, but probably to every single person in this room. But it says, what is Congress doing to become smarter on AI? Who do you turn to for digital ethics consultation to be better informed on the effects of advanced generative AI? Who teaches you, who informs you, who educates you and your staffs?
I'll start. So one of the first really helpful tutorials on AI was a couple of years ago. It was during the height of the pandemic, when then Speaker McCarthy had asked us to all go to a briefing on it. It was not classified in any way, but really driving home the limitations to AI. First, they gave us a scenario of a computer that assessed different radiology and different scans, and it kept on getting it 100% right as far as which x-ray, so someone had cancer, until they realized that the data it was using was it an older looking image? And of course, in a lot of developing countries, they're using older equipment. And once they realized that it had this faulty data set, they realized it was wholly fallible because it was using data like the quality of the image rather than whether there was cancer there as one of the factors. And so that to me was a great lesson, that the underlying data is absolutely critical. And then the other lesson we learned was that it is not thinking, it is doing what it's told to do in an efficient way. And so it's like a lazy, smart student who does the least possible to get to the A. I know our university president wouldn't want that among the Ohio State University, nor would want it at UCF. And so those early tutorials were really helpful. And then, of course, the folks that I look to, a whole range of folks from our military, but to our local doctors, to our local business people, to academia. You have to look at a wide swath of sources because it touches upon so many different areas of our society. And so I would say for every sector it touches, I look to experts in that area. And Congress is still really slow, so it's not like we've had a whole lot of laws to regulate this yet. And so we're still, and then of course we have a ton of committee hearings with myself focusing on the commercial aspects of it.
Darren, you mentioned the college student. I have a classmate that got a Nobel Prize in chemistry. And one of our reunions displayed a copy of his college transcript that had a big fat C in chemistry. So, whatever. I view the question not as much of a question as a suggestion. So I'll just ask all my VMask friends to look out for a call. We're going to get together to see if we can put some of that into action. Maybe have a hearing or something so they can present to the public what the challenges are and what we ought to be focused on.
Yes, sir. I see something stirring in your head, sir.
It's my closing.
Okay. So before we run out of time, I know that there's a portion of the audience and the attendees that will come to ITSEC this week that are interested and involved in the healthcare industry, specifically using simulation to train medical professionals to reduce medical malpractice. And in light of that, sir, NTSA continues to work with you all on the caucus to improve the readiness of our healthcare professionals through simulation. We appreciate your support over the last few years with these initiatives, and we're going to continue to work with you to further attention in this area. Are there, outside of healthcare simulation, are there other areas you believe are critical to our nation's security for which you would help industry?
I think there's one that we can leverage, and it's about border security, because we're still too people intensive when it comes to securing our borders. And I believe the logical, rational implementation of technology that's available to detect, let's say, border crossing, not only of people, but of things, drones, boats, whatever it happens to be. I think that's an area where I would like to see more innovation in how we do that and do it better. Like we just said a few minutes ago about the idea of a radiologist reading an x-ray, you know, and the AI read it and came up with different conclusions. I think we have, safety and security are the number one, I think, issue for the vast majority of my constituents. They want to feel as though they're safe and secure. How do we do that in the best way possible to enable those who are trying to do cross-border business legally from those who have malintent? And I would refocus some of our efforts, because we can learn in that as well in a non-kinetic environment for the most part.
I think climate change is an area where we need a lot of help, and particularly in my area, sea level rise, to make sure we're using AI to deal with that problem best as possible. And I think there are a lot of opportunities in education. There's a lot of data out there that we're not using. We're still sitting up here arguing about how to teach reading. Jack mentioned reading, whether we should be using whole language or phonics. There's enough data out there that we shouldn't be arguing about it. We should be looking at the data, and it should be a fairly clear conclusion as to which one works better. There's so much data. What kind of instruction is better than others? And a lot of the training you do here, we were at one booth where they talked about not only evaluating the students, but also evaluating the trainer, and what kind of trainers need a little professional development, what kind of training works best to get the message across. We don't do much of that in education. And some teachers, what really makes the difference between a good teacher and a bad teacher, we know the results. It's students don't learn, but there's too much data out there that we're not looking at, that we are missing, I think, an opportunity there.
So you mentioned the medical context already, and I do think it bears talking a little bit about it. You know, when you're scanning an individual's body who may have irregular organs or maybe older and before an advanced surgery, that surgeon can then, using digital twin and through a trial run, through simulation, really prep uniquely for that individual. In addition, in logistics, we do a lot of logistics and distribution around here. So I've seen at UCF them doing digital twin simulations of different distribution centers to make them more efficient. And I think the last area in the area, if I would say we need to do the most work on, is cybersecurity. We still have so many soft targets and major companies that are not up to snuff cyber-wise, and helping them through both the government and through major tech firms that we have in the country are going to be absolutely critical. We saw the Colonial Pipeline incident just a few years ago, where a whole area of the country lost their access to energy, and how critical that could be.
Super. Well, gentlemen, with our remaining time, I'd like to give you a chance for your closing remarks, and we'll go on the caucus from junior to senior. So Representative Soto, final remarks to our assembled audience.
Thank you all for choosing Central Florida. We're excited to have you back in Kissimmee. We appreciate you.
All right. Again, I echo my thanks for all of you who take the time to attend and engage in thoughtful dialogue, agreeing to disagree, but not being disagreeable when you do it, okay? We focused a lot of time on AI. Following thought: AI is going to create jobs, and it's also going to eliminate jobs. Let's deal with it. And then what I have on my phone here, so when I look at it, and by the way, I have my staff set this up because I'm not that good. But here's the quote: "Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other." John Adams. Thank you for being here.
Rep. Scott?
I like the quote where they say that the Constitution is just a gentleman's agreement amongst decent people. If you have people that are not decent people, the Constitution gets, that just doesn't work as well. But I want to thank everybody that focused on AI, interaction between AI and modeling and simulation, and the kinds of things that we ought to be focused on. I think have been very helpful, and I enjoyed coming back. Hopefully I'll be back next year.
Very well.
Thank you.
That's efficiency.
Right.
We all thank you very much for taking the time to come. We know how valuable your time is. We know what business you have back up in Washington, D.C., so we thank you and we appreciate you being here. If I could...
Wait a minute. Nobody asked a question about this little gold football. I set this up here for a reason. Anybody have any skin in the game on December the 13th? Okay, all right, now I'm a Marine. This says, go Army, beat Navy. My number 3 grandson is one of the equipment managers for the football team at a firstie. So bottom line is, let's have a great game, a game well played, and won on the last play. Let's keep it exciting. Thank you.
Well, sir, sir, you opened the door.
I know, I did.
And I just got to say that Navy each and every year loves to sing and speak second. Go Navy, beat Army. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to remind you, come back to this venue, this space, this room, 12:30. President Carter from the Ohio State University will continue the dialogue on AI and higher education. And Undersecretary of War Tata at 1400 will talk about personnel and readiness and training, since he owns that portfolio. Thank you for attending.
Jack.